Hello, all, and welcome to this episode of Talking Taboo podcast. I'm your host, Divyan Sharma, and in this episode, we are going to talk about the taboos concerning gender stereotypes in the Indian society. We have a very special guest with us today. He's a human rights lawyer based out of New Delhi, but what is unique about him is that as his professional day of working as a lawyer gets over, he fashions into a beautiful persona of a woman named Lush Monsoon and then goes on to present a fascinating dance called drag. Our guest today, therefore, is famously known as someone who's a lawyer by the day and a drag queen by the night. Welcome to our show, Ayushmaan. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Divyansh. And I'm glad to be
Right.
here today.
It's our pleasure to, really. So, Ayushmaan, why don't we jump right in and you tell us about this distinctive involvement of yours in the drag culture? What is drag about really? Is it a mere dance form or is it something more than that?
So actually, drag is not a dance form. Drag is just a medium of expression. So drag is basically when a man dresses up as a woman or a woman dresses up as a man. That's what the simplistic understanding of drag is. But
Hmm.
essentially, what drag is just playing with gender roles, gender constructs on stage, using gender as the central point of your focus when you're performing. That is just drag. It's exaggerating. Like, for example, when Madonna does a music video or Lady Gaga does a music video, they're also doing drag in form. So it's not like only certain people can do drag, anybody can do drag. And once you get into drag, which is like your drag avatar, then you can do anything in it. You can sing, you can dance, you can lip sync, you can do a comedy routine. So it's just totally up to the performer. So that's what drag essentially is.
Right. So, Ayushman, how would you describe the purpose of drag as? I mean, is the makeup and dress up in a female gender signifier, is it a mere means of entertainment or is something more?
It is, but like any art form, it has a purpose. It is political in nature because it's there to shake up things a little bit. It's there to break the norms and the constructs which society presents to us. So basically, the reason why we do drag is because we are trying to express our innate femininity. Because as a queer person,
Hmm.
I have lived in a society which does not allow you to freely be yourself, right? So
Hmm.
when I do drag, I express everything which I wasn't allowed by the society to do so for all these years. So I pour all of that energy into my drag performance. So it's kind of like an outlet for me to express who I am, what my other facet is as well.
Right. So is drag limited to people who are queer? Does it have any relation with genders, sexuality, or is it more inclusive?
See, anybody can do drag. Drag is for everybody and anybody. A woman can do drag. A person who identifies as a man can do drag. Anybody can do drag, whether they are heterosexual or homosexual or whatever they identify as. But drag has had a deep connection with the queer community because it's always been the central, what I say, like the theme around which the queer community has always come together. For example, if you take the Stonewall riots and the American
Hmm.
queer community, the drag
Hmm.
queens there have played a huge role in the liberation of the queer people and in getting equal rights. They have been at the forefront of all the movements. They have led resistance and protest marches. So that's where the context of drag with the queer community comes in, because it's one thing which allows us to come together as a community. It allows us to express our femininity, which the queer community is always ridiculed for. And that's
Hmm.
why it has a special significance for the queer community. But otherwise, drag can be done by anybody. There are performers like Queenie Harish, who passed away recently, but he was a very famous drag artist. and very internationally known from India, but he identifies as a straight man, and he had a family and a wife and children as well. So it's not that only some people can do it, anybody can do it.
Right. So it's more inclusive a community, and it has a broader purpose.
Correct.
Yeah. So Ayushman, since we are talking about this purpose and the way drag artists actually go on to exaggerate gender stereotypes, do you think that in that sense, does drag conform with the gender stereotyping or typecasting of mainstream gender roles, or does it actually go out and like defy those binary roles?
it's it can be both. um it
Right.
you when there are some drag performers who love to stick to the traditional markers of femininity, which is like long hair and just like a good body, which is very womanly, quote unquote. So in that sense, they try to resemble or pass as a woman as much as they can, and that's their goal in drag, to do that. And then there are other drag performers who completely what do we say, like, they just do what they want, they break the gender rules. They can have like a beard and be feminine, or they can have body hair all over, and these are not considered traditional markers of femininity, right? So
Hmm.
when they do that, they end up, and that's what we call gender fuck drag, okay, if I can use that word on your podcast. So that gender fuck drag is basically just mixing and matching and just breaking all the rules of gender, and making people sometimes uncomfortable by how you present yourself, because they are not used to seeing somebody in between like that. So that's also a form of drag, and I think both of them defy gender in their own ways, because what through drag we are trying to say essentially is that the society takes gender very seriously, but if I, who passes as a man, can also pass as a woman, and I can take all the traditional markers of femininity, and I can do that on stage, then I can show you how like temporary and fragile these things are. Like, it's we don't have to be caught up in the traditional markers of femininity. A woman doesn't have to always be a certain way, but if she wants to, and then she totally can, and that's what we are trying to show, that it's gender, it's a performance. Just like we are performing as a woman on stage, everybody else is also performing their gender in their daily lives. That's what drag is trying to do, and in that sense, it completely defies the gender stereotypes.
I think that's quite thought-provoking and interesting, really. I mean, the way in which this extreme sort of questioning of um rigid gender notions is brought about by drag is quite fascinating to me. And in fact, on your point of conforming with the gender roles, while doing our research, we also came across this very famous remark by RuPaul. And for the benefit of our audience, RuPaul is a very famous drag queen based in America who is known for hosting a competition series called RuPaul's Drag Race. And I believe, Ayushman, you also started drawing your inspiration for drag from the RuPaul Drag Race competition itself. So RuPaul once
Absolutely.
yeah, so RuPaul once said, I do not impersonate females. How many women do you know who wear 7-inch heels, 4-foot wigs, and skin tight dresses? I do not dress like a woman. I dress like a drag queen. So I think it's really important to understand the distinction that as a dance, it is about denying or defying your current status or your roles that are quite rigidly set.
Absolutely.
So yeah, yeah. So Aishma, now moving on to talking about your experience with it. So how did it start for you? Where did you, what was your first experience with drag like?
I mean, I have always been fascinated by the aspect of transformation which comes with any makeover or any, like, for example, when your mother dresses up for a party and suddenly she transforms from a like a normal housewife to
Yeah,
this fascinating, like a beautiful, glamorous woman. And that
right.
idea of that transformation is was very, very attractive to me, and I always used to pay attention to my mother when I used to see her doing that. So that was something which I always was in the back of my mind. And then I remember once or twice I did wear my mother's clothes and I just danced around, but I also knew that it's not gonna be acceptable and it's gonna be something which is gonna get me into trouble. So I did not pursue it any further. But then
Hmm.
back to many, many years and many, many years of like just not completely being yourself. And then when I was in the final year of the law school at NUJS, and then that's when I discovered the show RuPaul's Drag Race, and it was like I discovered a tribe of people who I could call my tribe because they were people who had led difficult lives and they had
Hmm.
been bullied and they had gone through a lot of struggles to just be themselves. But here they were on public television and dressing up as women. So and living their best lives. So that is something which really made me drawn to the show. But still, then I was like, I like them, I like watching them, but I cannot ever do that for myself because I'm too scared to even venture into this whole thing. But the thing is that when something is meant to happen, it happens. And once that thing got into my head, like I need to try this once. And so after college, when I just graduated, I started just doing it for myself in my room, just putting on some makeup which I bought from the local shop and just dancing and just having fun with it. And then I realized that this is just a complete new persona which I had been hiding inside me,
Hmm.
right? And it just felt so good to release all that all those years of like restrictions that I had put on myself. To be honest, when I first got into drag, I thought like I felt like I had broken some great rule of nature. It felt like I had committed like a huge sin or something, that I
Yeah.
had crossed that line finally, which like people around me, probably my parents, were scared that I would probably cross one day. So when I did that, but then I also at the same time when I was looking at myself when the first time I did drag, I was like, I look beautiful, I look gorgeous. Like where was this person hiding? And even though when I show you the pictures right now, you will be like, oh my god, those that was a horrible, horrible look. It wasn't as polished as probably I can do right now. But at that point of time, I was living for myself. And that's what
Hmm.
drag does to you. It makes you fall in love with yourself. Or it's like it's a tool for self love. Okay. So that's what I
Hmm.
was missing in my life at that point of time. So I completely started pursuing it, and I got really serious about it. I applied to some online competitions, which were international, and I debuted as Lush Monsoon. And when I did that, the amount of validation and support I got from people was just incredible. And at the same time, while I was doing this, I was also in Delhi pursuing theater, and there I had a completely different experience because I was not fitting into any of the roles. Sometimes they were saying that okay, you're not masculine enough or not macho enough for this role that we have. Like you can't be a husband because you need to be more macho and more stronger. And of course you can't be a woman because like we have other women for that, so you can't take that role. So I wasn't not fitting anywhere, and I was feeling completely lost in that theater space. So at the same time, so when I found drag and I debuted and I got so much positivity and validation from
Hmm.
people, I was overwhelmed and I was like, okay, this is something serious. This is something which makes me happy. This is something which allows me to be myself. I need to pursue this. And then
Yeah.
finally, I debuted publicly at the Delhi International Queer Film Festival. And since then, it has just been, yeah, a
Right.
good journey. Yeah.
So how do you actually manage these two identities? How are Lush and Ayushman, as you said, it's a complete transformation into a different world. So lawyer in the day and drag queen in the night. What does that decompartmentalization look like?
That decompartmentalization was quite difficult in the beginning, to be honest, because when I used to get out of my drag thing, and because in the real world there was nobody who like I was not like out yet, and, like my drag thing was not out there, so it was like living in my head, and then just coming back to reality. So it was very difficult. It was like, what did I do the whole night when I was doing drag? And then suddenly, like, now I'm back to normal and I feel completely invisible again in that sense.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of situation. It was like having
Mhm.
multiple personalities in your head. And
Right.
it was very confusing in the beginning. Okay. But then gradually what happened that I was able to take some of the confidence which I had in my drag character as Lush Monsoon and infuse it into my boy self itself. So I became little more open, little more colorful, started wearing things that I wouldn't normally wear. I got my ears pierced and things like that, which made me feel like more uh, complete and more myself. So by doing that, what happened that now Ayushmaan and Lush Monsoon are at a medium. Like I don't feel like two different
Mhm.
people. I feel like one person who does different things. They are not so distinct anymore. I have blurred the boundaries a lot between them.
Right. So it has taught you more about yourself than the drag dance.
Absolutely. It has taught me about myself. It has taught me how to appreciate myself because I had never felt attractive in my life. Like that was not
Mhm.
the first
Right.
thing that would come to my mind that okay, I am physically attractive or I'm beautiful looking. That was I mean I knew that I was good in studies and this and that and I could do certain things well, but that physical aspect of myself I had never appreciated at all. And that happened when I got into drag and I saw how good I could look and how people treated me differently. And that's what like that was one of the key aspect which I learned from my drag thing.
Right. So Ayushman, we talked about your family a bit, and so I mean, all of us have a feminine side, and our parents are laughing about it when we are growing up. So how do you think does it then radically transform into hatred that when we grow up and express our willingness to explore these non-binary gender roles, it suddenly becomes such a big problem?
You're absolutely right. It starts like that. I had never been ridiculed by my parents. They
Mm.
had always let me be myself, whether I was dancing to a Madhuri Dixit song or doing whatever. They never told me, okay, don't be like this or don't be like that or behave more like a boy. That was never ever told to me, okay? So in my home, I had never been ostracized for my femininity, but
Mm.
it's precisely because of what you said is because they didn't take it seriously enough probably. Okay, they thought
Yeah.
maybe it's just a passing thing or maybe it doesn't have any effect on my life or its decisions that I have to make. But it's like when I after college and everything, and especially now that I'm growing to like a more approaching a more manageable age, quote unquote, is like suddenly like all the problems and questions have begun, and now they are like, oh my god, like so what are you doing? And suddenly like now I feel like they have become way more conservative than they were. They have become way more conscious of my femininity than they were before, and I have to like fight it all over again. I feel like sometimes I feel like a rebellious teenager again because
Mhm.
it's like I have to constantly assert my space and tell these are my boundaries and like you can't tell me what kind of
Right.
person I am. Because
Mm.
they have just like any middle class parents from a small town, they have their own set dreams which they see every other child pursuing, of like getting a stable job, of getting married, of all these false notions of stability.
Yeah.
And so they think that I should pursue that as well. And so the one thing that comes in that way of all these things is my uh, identity, and that's what they fear. So we never talk about it, and we've never had a conversation about it. But it's on everybody's minds. I know, and everybody's thinking about it. So yeah, it's become even more difficult as I've grown up instead of getting easier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a struggle, and especially in this period of lockdown, I think a lot of people from our generation have realized that this generation gap is something really hard to bridge. Um, so and that is, I mean, when it comes to the queer community, at least this kind of heteronormativity is not just present at home, but it's quite common to see a lot of opponents argue that if everyone was to turn this way, our collective moral conscience of the society, the Indian society, would be impacted in some way. So what do you have to say about that? I mean, how do we go about breaking this taboo in a society where these kind of stereotyping notions and gender roles have been cemented in the mindset of people over generations?
I mean, I can only laugh about the moral conscience part because, I mean, clearly, with the way things are going on in the world that we live in right now, clearly most people do not have a moral conscience, and that's why we are where we
Right.
are right now.
Mhm.
um it's really horrible what's the current political societal context is right now. And in
Mhm.
that space, I think the most moral thing to do is to be honest with yourself, is to be honest with respect to who you are and presenting that to the world. So the thing is that the society, I don't know, it takes time for them to change, or um I don't know how you mold people's minds. I think
Mhm.
art is a good medium because with my drag, what I try to do is like my drag makes a lot of people uncomfortable. A lot of people whom I know, whom I had been friends with before, they have been uncomfortable with this whole concept of drag and why am I doing this. And even though they're still my friends, but they still find it
Right.
difficult to understand this whole process and stuff. And I think that's a very good start to changing their mind and changing their taboo, because just by me being present and being like doing what I am doing, it forces them to confront things which they have never had to in their lives, you know. If one
Right.
of your friends, if you're a straight man and one of your friends starts dressing up as a woman, how do you deal with that situation? That itself is gonna give them a whole new like lesson in breaking some taboos in their lives. So it's I think as and when more and more people do what they like and be themselves, I think it's going to become even more normal to be who you are, and that's going to break taboos, because I know that a moral lecture does not help them. I have spoken to
Right.
my parents a lot of times, not
Mhm.
about myself but in a third party context, about other issues like feminism and this and that and politics and about sexuality and everything. And it's like they are stuck and they just do not want to learn. And that's the case for a lot of other people as well. Like, you come what you may, like you can engage with them, you can tell them, but it's they won't understand. It's like they have created this wall. They want to live in this bubble, and there is no way you can get them out of it. They will get out of it if they want to themselves. So the only thing that you can do then is just to keep going about doing your own thing. Like, if other people consider it a taboo for you of like, what you're doing, then it's upon them. And just because you're doing it, someday they will be able to like break it in their heads as well, is what I feel.
Right. So, Ayushman, how do you see the future of Indian drag as? And I ask this question in the light of the striking down of Section 377. Do you think that there will be, as a result of this, a change in perception?
There has been like there are a lot of mainstream things have opened up for drag because of the 377 verdict. A lot of clubs have started opening up to performances. Earlier, there was this, even though you might not be conservative and you might not hate LGBTQ people, but you still had this fear of what the law might do in your head. So you may not have taken every action that you wanted. But now, after the 377 thing, things have become a little different, although it has not changed completely, but it has changed to the extent that more avenues have opened up for drag. And I think the future for drag is in the like it lies in the number of people who want to do this. And I already can see a huge number of growth in terms of the number of performers that have come into this whole field. It has become a whole new community, and that's what is going to be the future of drag. Like, the more people join, I see already like the younger people, people who are younger than me, they're way more freer with respect to their sexuality and with respect to their identity, and they are wearing it on their sleeves all the time. They're not hiding it at all. And that's what drag is going to be in the future as well. It's going to be a huge thing, I hope, and I hope it becomes much more Indian thing, because right
Yeah.
now it's like inspired by the West, but I hope it becomes a beast onto its own in India as well. Yeah.
Mm. Right, definitely. I hope the future is more promising. Ayushman, before we end this session, we would like to share with our users where they can find your beautiful drag dance performances, because I personally find them quite intriguing. So, if you would share your handles with our users here, it will be great.
Absolutely. You can find me at Lush Monsoon everywhere on Instagram, on Facebook, and just Google it and you'll find it. Mostly on Instagram though. So it's great. Like, that's what we want as artists. We want people to support our work, and that can be through coming to our shows. So many of my people from like law school whom I knew, they have come and seen my performances. They have come and supported me, and that means a huge deal. Okay. Uh,
Right.
and that's what, just as an artist, it's like just a follow or a like or just a comment of appreciation. That means a lot to us, because it's not an easy thing to do at any cost. It's a huge thing.
Definitely.
It takes a huge toll on you, also. But at the end of the day, it brings me joy. It brings the people who watch me joy, and as long as that's happening, that's all that matters to me. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. So with this, we come to the end of our session today. I'm sure that the story of your struggles, Ayushman, will go a long way in making these conversations a bit more easier, but also would help people who have been struggling to accept themselves or those around them. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Divyansh, for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Talking Taboo podcast. If you like our idea and want to support it, do follow us on Instagram at We Talk Taboo and visit our Facebook page at Talking Taboo. A simple share and support will go a long way in mainstreaming these conversations and breaking the taboos that we seek to fight. To stay up to date on the show, do follow us on the platform of your choice. We hope you liked this episode and see you in the next one.